I'm against remote ID.
G'day, welcome back to the channel and thank you for joining me for Mac's No Remote ID video. So I'm going to go and talk to my Gran in a bit. She's a lovely old lady called Pauline and she grew up in England. She's seen many a thing and seen World War II, lived through the home front there. And so yeah, I mean, she's a stoic old woman, and we're going to go get her opinion and try to educate her about FPV and remote ID and why we're so butthurt about it. I'm just going to put the full interview in there. I didn't write a script or anything. I just went over and started explaining and chatting to her. She was good enough to give me the time, and it's not so easy, you know, for her to really take in all this new information that I'm laying out. There's a lot of it, and I'm not the best at explaining things. One of my skills is not communication. It might surprise you. Anyway, before I do that, I do make a lot of my own thoughts known in that little interview, but before I do that, I just want to say that I do understand that there is a need for regulation and control of airspace as it becomes more utilised by various groups. However, I'm very strongly on the side of public spaces remaining public spaces and on not over-regulating something which has led to innovation and education and the bettering of our society. This is happening in a number of areas in our, you know, Western societies and whatnot now. We really are just sort of over-regulating ourselves to oblivion without actually doing anything really meaningful to solve the real problems that we're facing. Have we done, you know, like, what are we doing? Like, anyway, that's another thing. If you want to hear my political or opinions on climate change or how we're going with that, how we should deal with that, I'm happy to do videos about that stuff, but that's not what this is for. Well beyond the scope. We need to stand up or we're going to lose the freedoms we've got. Little by little, our freedoms are being taken. And the English have a great expression for this: the thin edge of the wedge. All these freedoms we have, they were hard fought for. People died and sacrificed their lives over the course of almost 2,000 years to try to get them for us in various societies over various timelines. But in England, you know, I mean, the fight was started 1066 or a little bit before then, and that never stopped. And you know, if you're wondering about the English in London, when they tried to stop people drinking from water sources that were contaminated with cholera, they rioted because they want to choose where they drink their water, even if it is full of poison. They were well aware that it killed them. Anyway, well, some didn't believe it. A lot were well aware and still rioted, still were objecting to it. We need to have a similar mindset. Similar, not the same. We do need some regulation, but also we need to fight for our freedoms. And if we don't have an open, easy to access aviation hobby, what's going to happen to all those children that would have been bought a model airplane and flown it, thought it was the coolest thing ever? Like, are we just condemning them to simulators on the computer and VR? Is that what we're doing? Are we going to condemn them to go inside and get a vitamin D deficiency? They're not going to learn the electronics, the aviation knowledge, the engineering skills, all these different things. I could go on. They're not going to learn these things in there on a computer. They are going to learn them out here. And if you regulators make it difficult for people, what are we going to do? Are we going to have, you know, where are the future Wright brothers going to come from? The ones that revolutionised the prop design that we're all trying to do to make it quiet. Where are these people, the inventors, the engineers, going to come from if you cut off their easy access to it? Parents nowadays don't have the time to, you know, buy a model aeroplane. Like, a lot of them don't even buy their kids a model aeroplane when they should. But like, they don't have the time to buy them an aeroplane, register the goddamn thing, to pass a test, then take their kid down to the field every time they want to fly. What is this? Anyway, let's go have a look-see at this interview with my grandmother. I hope you enjoy this content, and I hope that I'm able to get the message across that we need to protect this for the sake of STEM, or STEAM, however you want to put it, for the sake of the future innovations in aviation, and for the sake of freedom. Let's check it out. I'm here with my grandma. Say hello.
Yeah.
And I thought that maybe it might be a good idea to sit here and explain what's happening to her. My grandma is, not someone who's familiar with FPV, but that's kind of the point. If I can explain this to my grandma and explain to her why we're also butthurt about it, and we don't want remote ID in its current form at all. There are some cases where I do believe remote ID for hobbyists may be applicable, but not for the vast majority. So if I can explain that to her, I can explain it to anyone. I'm probably going to fail because I'm not good at communication anyway. Yeah, I know I make YouTube videos, but there's editing. I am just not good at communication anyway. But I'm going to try and maybe this can be used to explain it to other people who are completely unfamiliar with FPV and some of the modern facets of life that we are living now and we enjoy. So let's get to it. You know how I go out there, I stand there and I fly, like in this area here, so in the valley, where there's no danger of an aircraft ever coming in. Well, there's a lot of people like me who do that. In fact, there's a surprising amount of people like me.
He hasn't got to interfere with the aeroplanes.
Yeah. So I'm not sure if you do know anything about the Airspace Rules, but there's an area of airspace above the ground. I believe it goes up to 150 meters, but we'll just say 100 meters. It depends where you are in the world, but generally it's reasonably the same. Sort of this public airspace, this G-class airspace, where anyone can fly their hobby models, and airplanes are not meant to fly into unless they're landing, taking off, or conducting a special operation. Now, that has always ensured there's been a good separation between model aviation and stuff on the ground, a lot of the birds too, which is probably why the rule was originally there, and the planes and helicopters and such. Now there hasn't been a problem with this. How often have you heard about a model aeroplane causing an aviation crash in your life?
I've never heard of it.
Exactly. Now, for reference, you lived in England, so yeah. Just for the records, for the viewers, to hear. Now, what's happened is that what's happening in the last 5-10 years, maybe a bit more, is that large companies like Google, Amazon, and some others are trying to use that airspace as well, or they have intentions to use that airspace for commercial activities. Also, at the same time that this has happened, there's been a growth in the number of hobbyists like me. So there's more people who want to use that just above the ground airspace. Now, the government, having let the model aviation world be, or regulation around the world, having let the model aviation world be because of the safe record they've had, for some reason has decided that now is the time to make sure that there is control of these people. And so they've decided that everything over 250 grams and anything in weight, any flying craft over that weight, and anything underneath that that's used for a commercial purpose, they've decided that you have to register those and carry a device that broadcasts not just the drone's location, not to other airplanes, by the way. It doesn't work like a radar or anything like that. There's another system designed for that, but this is not that. Okay, this is just going to say this drone is here to a system that will keep a record of that, and it'll also say where the pilot is. All right, and if anyone's unsure about that operation, they're able to call up the police. In America, this gets directed to the FBI. The FBI then has to search with the Federal Aviation Administration over there to find out the records. And so you're going to have this massive involvement in government every time someone goes to fly their little drone.
Someone
goes to fly their little tiny drone.
Oh, yeah.
And I believe in England, the law is such that if it has a camera under 250 grams, it has to be registered and carry the remote ID. Basically what this means is, like, I would have to personally, I've got 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 aircraft that I'd have to register. I don't fly them all the time, but if I ever wanted to fly them, because they're out of testing and built, majority, I'd have to register them for a cost of between $5 to $15 each. And I would have to buy a device, a remote ID device, at the cost of probably 100 Australian dollars each if the exchange rates are correct, okay? Now, we don't believe this is fair. We believe this is an undue impost upon the hobby. It's worse than that, though. Because, and I want your opinion on this particularly, is this is going to stop people going and buying their kid a model plane.
Oh.
They're not going to, like, so all of those little kids that would have been bought like a model plane or a model helicopter and probably flown it and crashed it, but had that moment of wow, when they, you know what I mean, and then start like a career. It starts a career, you know what I mean. That is the kind of thing that starts someone becoming an engineer, or you know what I mean. I was wondering if I could get your opinion on that, like whether you think that is right or wrong. Yeah, or have I actually explained it correctly to you?
Not really. What you're trying to say is that, is this something that parents will have control of?
Well, so if a parent wants to buy their child a little
plane,
a little tiny model plane, they'll have to go to the shop, get it, then they'll have to go on the internet, register, pass the test. Literally, they'll have to do some silly little test and pass it, even if they're not going to fly at all, even if it's just a kid. And it's 251 grams of plane. So it's like, that ball. They'll have to pay a fee. It's like, do you ever see a parent doing that? Yeah.
So is it something to put the brakes on kids?
Well, it's something to stop. I think it's something to stop the use of the airspace. They say it's for safety, but I think it's to lower the use of the airspace so they can give it over to Google and Amazon to do their little deliveries. So we'll have drones flying over there, delivering McDonald's to whoever over there and whatnot. Like, I wouldn't mind if it was for medicine, but yeah, it's probably not going to be for medicine. It's probably going to be for a coffee, And you've heard how loud mine can be. Even with your hearing aids, you've heard my craft fly, yeah? Well, the ones they deliver with will be louder, a lot louder, actually, even though they claim not. But yeah, so it's going to stop people getting their kids any presence to do with model aviation, pretty much, because they will have an extra registration fee and they'll have to do things, and it's, you know, difficult. So was there anything else about how I explained it that you wanted to ask?
So why are you interested in this?
Because it's going to take away something I love. I think there should be some level of regulation, but I don't believe that there should be a level of regulation that is currently proposed.
You mean it's too much regulation?
I believe it will be too much, yeah. For instance, an aeroplane's never ever going to fly in the valley here. You know what I mean? Like, we do get them go overhead every so often, and we get recreational flights that come and do a coastal flight. They just private planes. But they're 100 and 200 meters up, because this is a hill and that's a hill, and we're in the valley, and it's kind of same up that way. It goes down through there and it steepens. I believe that there should be such a thing called there's different words that are used, but like if you're flying in an enclosed area, so you've got like big trees around you and whatnot, and there's no chance of another manned craft coming in at all, or any other craft like coming in because you're on private property, I believe you should be able to fly. Like, and especially if it's your property, you should be able to fly over your property with whatever you want. If you want to, you know, like within that Class G airspace, for testing purposes at the very least. There are people who rate, like me, sorry, okay, I'll start this again. There are people who fly in enclosed proximity places, and they fly what's called proximity or freestyle. It's because we like to fly around things and react and flow and enjoy the movement and that kind of thing. And it's relaxing, centering.
That's over your own properties.
Yeah, or like, you know, if it was like in a safe public space, you know, like you've got to be very mindful of the safety issues, because there are some safety issues with everything. And you've got a battery on there that could get damaged. You need to be, you know, aware of that. You've got a craft that you may be flying up to 70 kilometers an hour. So you don't fly near people, above private property, people's things. You know, you don't fly towards someone's car to turn off, even if you know you're going to turn off and you can make it, because if you screw up and the drone goes dead, you may run into the car. So you're very mindful about things. You stay away from that. And that's why a lot of, I would say 99.9%, or actually 100% of the people like me, hobbyists, not the DJI guys, but the hobbyists, are bloody responsible. And if they're not not responsible, I don't think they deserve to be called a hobbyist, because it's part of the thing. I've never met anyone who was irresponsible myself, you know, flying near people's property or endangering anyone. So I think that freestylers and proximity in enclosed space should be allowed. I know there are two other groups of aviation models.
But the whole idea is that they're trying to prevent it.
They're trying to make sure their rules are blanket rules, which are not thought out into. There's no nuance in, like, oh, there's different types of pilots and there's different reasons that people do it, and therefore, like, so there's another group of people which would be classed as racers, and they are people who literally, like, go to an area that's got a track marked out, and they'll fly around the track and race each other, right? Now this is generally, like, actually really safe, even though these objects fly very fast, these craft fly very fast, it's generally very safe. It's done low to the ground, it's done in big open areas, or like there's netting if it's an enclosed area and the public's close, depending on the level of budget that the race operator has. So these are, and then, so you got those guys. So again, I would say that they should have no need for registration or carrying a remote ID, because firstly, they crash their craft a lot, and they generally don't survive. Like, even if they don't crash, they generally burn out the motors or the ESCs
I
quite a
suppose
lot.
if they crash, it's their expense.
Yeah, but also, like, even if they don't crash, they're pushing those crafts so hard that sometimes they just burn up. You know, the electronics can't handle it and just burns. You can imagine that any registration system there is going to be a pain in the ass when you're going through craft that quickly. And there's the extra weight of the remote ID. There's another group of people who I do believe should have remote ID.
Have a what?
Have the remote ID. So that's the device that I was talking about that lets people know that there's a craft here and the pilot's here.
Oh.
There's people who fly a long way away. So, they go somewhere, say there's like a cliff, and they fly up the cliff, and it may be a couple of kilometers. That's not long range, but they fly a couple of kilometers away, come back. Maybe that requires a remote ID. But if you're going beyond line of sight or very, 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 very far, some people can fly their craft. I think the world record's around... I can't remember it right now, but it's over 50 kilometers. So that's from here to... that's past Gosford. Like, yeah. You could fly from here to Ettalong and back, no worries, with that kind of distance. But they should have the device and register their craft, because they're going long distances. There's a chance that they may lose contact, and then the craft will have to fly itself back.
So far.
So they don't. So when the long range guys fly out, they have a GPS module, like the phone. They know the craft knows where it is.
Oh, I see.
And so if it loses its signal back home, it'll turn around and come back if they've set it up correctly. That's the problem, you see. Like, there are different types of operators, and then there are commercial operators.
And is there any other people interested in this area like you are?
Well, yeah. That's the thing. Like, you got big guys like Google and Amazon, big corporations are interested in flying their drones in our airspace. So it's the government. It looks shadily, it looks shady because it's like the government's trying to, in America and in Australia and in England, like at the same time, basically, trying to take away the airspace from the public.
Oh.
And so that's what we're trying to fight against.
For what specific reason would they want to do that? Money?
The people who will benefit, you always follow the money, right? People who will benefit from this monetarily will be the people doing the drone-based deliveries.
Yeah.
So they'll be doing courier jobs with it. That's where the money will be. The government will be able to get money, a new revenue stream. There's companies who are being hired just to record the flights.
The what?
Record the flights of the drones.
Oh, yeah.
So they're going to be paid by the government to keep the records. And there's the people who make the devices that you're going to have to put on the craft. So there are some vested interests.
But you can't fight the government.
You can. You're English. I mean, this is what English is. They couldn't make Londoners drink clean water without riots.
You think you're strong enough to fight a strong government?
No, one man alone isn't.
No.
One man or woman alone isn't. But as a group, if we speak up, yes. If we make enough noise, yes. And so, that's why we're here. That's why we're making a video, to make some noise, to tell people that there's a problem. And if I can tell you that there's a problem, then hopefully other people can be told as well. Because, you know nothing about it. You've never flown. Oh, wait, you have. Actually, she has flown. Not flown, but been in the headset. Remember up on the veranda? You remember that? We'll have to do it again. We'll do it again. So yeah, I'll give you that. Actually, no, this time it'll be better because it'll be the high definition stuff. So it'll look better. And she's done VR. Sat next to the Thames. Haven't you? Do you remember that? With
What?
the VR headset?
Yeah.
And you London Bridge?
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, so I think I'll leave it there. I think I've tired you out a bit, haven't I? Yeah, I mean, it's... I think it's very poignant that you can't recall a single remote control incident. I think that's a good reference, thanks. Because, you know, you've seen a few things, and although technically the V2, the V1, the buzz bomb, that was a remote control, that was a drone, technically. Because it was a dumb drone, but it was a drone. But yeah, that's another whole kettle of fish, isn't it?
Well, are there many people interested in this round here?
In the local area, I've met maybe 4 or 5. But you know, this is the insular peninsula. I'm in terms of like the community at large. I think there are well over 100,000 people who are model hobbyists in Australia. Well over. They're not all unified. You know, we're not all unified behind the same message because, again, there are some vested interests. And this brings up another issue, actually. If they bring all these laws in and regulations in, which they probably will, people like me, you know, I can walk a kilometre, right?
What?
I can walk a kilometre. But could you imagine, you know, God rest his soul, but if Bernard was here and Bernard wanted to go fly a plane, could he walk a kilometre? You know what I mean? Well, the local aviation field, right, has a gate that's 1 kilometre away from the field that's only opened for by like certain members, right? So if you don't get there at the right time, you have to walk a kilometre. So you're not doing it. And this is a real problem because it's now a lack of access issue. And that means disabled people and the infirm will not be able to go fucking do something that they probably live for. You know, when you're disabled or infirm and you're in pain and you fucking can't do the things you want to do, I've been there, you've been there, it sucks. And so those things you can still do are more important. And so that's a real issue as well. Yeah. So there are a few people, and I think if enough people make noise, and if I, you know, and others send these videos to enough politicians, then...
It might work.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah. Any other comments on it? Any other thoughts, questions, or comments?
No, not really. You're at the beginning of it, aren't you?
Well, the fight's been going on for a while, but the world has been watching what's going on in America. And in America, they're falling over themselves trying to get it in, the FAA, the Federal Administration, Aviation Administration, is falling over itself trying to get the rules and the regulations in place, but they've not been able to come through on cheap technology to do it. They've not been able to come through on a good system. They've not been able to come through on any nuance that sort of understands the ecosystem in which they're trying to regulate. And yet still, England and Australia are deciding to follow suit. And funnily enough, Canada...
Well, that's unusual.
No.
Well, I mean, if against America...
No, they're doing the same thing.
Oh.
They're following along.
Oh.
Without waiting for America to get it right, they're making the same mistakes or trying to plan to make the same mistakes. So, yeah. Canada has an exemption for under 250 grams where there's no requirement for getting it registered, apparently. So Canada has at least a little bit of nuance. But I don't know why we can't do that here. But it's the same thing as... they're just trying to take all our freedoms away. I swear, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but they're making it freaking hard.
Well, who has to say yay or nay?
Well, what they're doing at the moment is there's a public consultation period. Last time there was a public consultation period for this kind of topic, they didn't listen. I think there were 22,000 submissions. Some of them were no good. Like just people being angry. Some of them were legitimate and very well pointed. And a lot with commercial interests who said that this is not a good idea. None of them were listened to. None of them, especially the hobbyist concerns, completely ignored. Like we don't even have representation.
Who
basically,
is that?
In Australia anyway. So the government... CASA, the Civil Aviation Safety Authority in Australia, did a public consultation period. I believe it was only 2 weeks. Might be wrong about that.
So isn't Australia interested?
No, they are. They're doing it.
Oh.
Yes. So here, the UK and the United States. Yep. Odd that. So it's like the United States and the 51st and 52nd states. Anyway, so you're just going to be basically forced to do it unless we can all make our voice heard.
So is there anybody locally that's as interested in this as you are?
Yeah.
Are you working with somebody?
In terms of locals, it's very mixed. There's a lot of people who have no understanding of it, and that's a lot of the problem. Like, a lot of people think that drones are out to take photographs of you in the bathtub, some crap like that. And the honest fact of the matter is that, well, hobbyist drones aren't equipped with cameras with that good of a resolution. Their cameras happen to look up because they're fixed, so they don't look down at all, right? So how are they going to look in your bathroom window when they don't look down? We don't give a shit about that. Also, we're not quiet. We're very loud. If I come up to the window and I'm like looking at Valulu, you can hear me. Even with the hearing aids, you can hear me. So they're not quiet. There's a misconception in the public. I actually almost fell out with...
I haven't got them in, by the way, now.
You haven't?
No, we're having a conversation.
You're doing pretty well. But I've got the corner here helping as well, I suppose. You remember Mark?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Mark who?
The sailing?
Who?
Sailing? Mark from the sailing team?
No, I didn't know him.
Down at the Royal Prince Alfred?
He used to go out on the boat.
Yeah. We had a bit of an argument about it and I just let it go. But he was adamant that drones were bad and blah, 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 and he would not hear a word of it, Some people are very obstinate about how they feel about it. And they had made up their mind. And I wasn't going to make an issue of it, but personally I do have an issue with that kind of mindset because it's very sad. He would really enjoy it. But anyway, so there's a lot of people who don't know. So, sorry, what did you say, Pauline?
So what are you going to do next? What's the next move?
The next move is to put some more thoughts, if I have any, into the video and to edit it up, put it out there as one of the videos about remote ID that's coming out.
But when
personally,
you've done your bit, well, who will you pass it on to?
I think I'll notify XChat if he doesn't get it notified by the system, the internet system. But it's being sort of blasted out there. Yeah, so this will help that. Please do make your own video. If you are a pilot, you're doing FPV. If you
am I on that? I am.
You are on that. You're the main character of this story. She doesn't know. I mean, she does know, but she doesn't know. If you're an FPV
Fame
pilot,
at last.
Fame at last. Finally on TV. So I think I'm going to wrap the conversation up there, and I hope that this is useful to someone else trying to explain this problem to someone else. I know it's a bad sentence. If you're an FPV pilot and you've got a phone, please make a video. You don't have to have a YouTube channel to post a video. You can post it under your name. That is a channel, basically. Or just make a channel. Just call it, no remote ID XX27549. Just whatever. And make it and post the video. Make sure you put down below in your tags, no remote ID. All right? And no RID, because that's cover the bases. And FPV and all that other kind of stuff's probably helpful too. We got a long fight ahead of us, and we may or may not make it, but we're not going down without being heard.
I'm against remote ID.
I'll catch you next time. Thanks for watching. Please do like and subscribe. Peace on out. Indeed, there are a few final points I would like to include because this topic is so, the way it impacts society and the hobby is so broad that there is a lot to talk about. The 250 gram weight limit is onerous and punitively limits the hobby to the very smallest and least able of craft. I'm not sure if that's meant to be some sort of insult, but it does seem like there is zero consideration to actually looking at the types of craft that are flown by the hobby. Regulators are completely failing to understand the section of the aviation community they are meant to be regulating. Please complain to your representatives about this. That is the only way for there to be some sort of change in the regulation, for them to get sick of hearing your voice and scared that they will lose your vote. And yeah, say you're a swing voter. That might help. ADS-B would be far superior to RID. If carried on long range and beyond visual line of sight operations, it would ensure a safer airspace environment. And this could be done on a voluntary self-regulation basis. There was no need for this kind of immediate jump to over-the-top regulation. It could have simply been a letter, an open letter to the community asking for, initiatives and responses on how we would intend to regulate ourselves. But there was none of that. It was simply, I'm sure others will agree, we'll listen to you, but we're not going to actually take action on anything you say. There are very few people on our side, and it's really sad to see. Thank you for your time. I hope you have a great day.